Bobby Babich and the Buffalo Bills defense took center stage at OTAs. What did we learn? I'm sharing my top takeaways today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Well, folks, welcome in. We got a bunch to cover on this episode, primarily week 3 OTAs, the voluntary OTAs. This is the last week of them, so we have some practice reports to dive into. We have comments from Bobby Babich, the Bills' new defensive coordinator, and several players, including Von Miller, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau. So I want to reflect on that, plus some newsy stuff. The Bills have signed several draft picks. They released a player, and the Bills made a bid for the 2028 NFL draft. So plenty to dive into today. Let's start with practice. And again, this is the voluntary OTA session, and this is week 3 of that. Next week will be mandatory minicamp. So here's what we learned. Well, Alex Praski of the Batavia Daily News gave us an attendance update. He shared that the following players were absent from Bills OTAs on Tuesday: Dion Dawkins, Dawson Knox, Rasul Douglas, Justin Shorter, KJ Hamler, Dewan Smoot, and Nicholas Moreau. I think the interesting one there is Rasul Douglas. This is now 3 Tuesdays in a row that it was reported that he wasn't there. And I'm not sure if that's been the norm for him throughout his career, but he has not been present for any of the voluntary OTA sessions that were available for the media to cover. Also, players that were present but not in helmets: Mike Edwards, Taron Johnson, Dorian Williams, Edifwan Ulofoshio, Ray Davis, and Reggie Gilliam. Some practice nuggets according to Alex Praski, and I love to dive into these nuggets and try to extrapolate the interesting stuff, so that's exactly what I'll do here. Alex tweeted out, "Tough day for the Bills offense at Tuesday OTAs. Second session of team. Josh Allen led offense sidelined by Sean McDermott after David Edwards jumps early. Then an Allen interception by Deion Jones after Damar Hamlin tip. Later, Greg Rousseau would-be sack on Allen, beating Ryan Vandemark." So some interesting nuggets here. First of all, that this is a first-team rep, of course, Josh Allen on the field, and Damar Hamlin and Deion Jones were part of the first-team defense. And so Damar Hamlin with Mike Edwards not available with the shoulder continues to get a lot of opportunity with the defense. And so we continue to be mindful of that and not be dismissive of the idea that Damar Hamlin could make this roster. He's certainly getting a lot of reps right now. Also, Deion Jones getting this opportunity, presumably to work alongside of Terrell Bernard. And with Dorian Williams not participating, with Nicholas Moreau not there, I think it's interesting that he's getting some opportunity to run with the first team. And you kind of expect stuff like this. This is the time to tinker and experiment and put guys in different positions. And so that makes sense. I don't know that Deion Jones has a great opportunity to make this roster, but him getting that first team rep doesn't not mean something. And then also Ryan Vandemark getting beaten by Greg Rousseau on a sack. It's kind of interesting because you know that he's getting first team reps. If he's giving up sacks, that's allowing Josh Allen to get sacked. But you have a situation now where both Dion Dawkins and Spencer Brown are not practicing for this session. And so you would expect him to be in the lineup under those circumstances. But I think what would be more interesting to know is that if Dion Dawkins was in at left tackle, if it was him getting the first team reps at right tackle, or is Lyle Collins getting some of that opportunity? I think it's Ryan Vandemark's job to lose, but something that's at least worth monitoring with the incentive-laden deal that the Bills gave to Lyle Collins. Alex Brasky also shared that Curtis Samuel was featured in the early portion of team drills at OTAs, caught the first pass of the session from Josh Allen for a medium gain. Later, Samuel was the ball carrier on a toss play. I think Curtis Samuel in this offense continues to be something that's really intriguing to me. And we know that he's a versatile player that can run. In terms of take handoffs, he can also, of course, run routes and catch the football. But going back to that season that Joe Brady had with Curtis Samuel in Carolina, Curtis Samuel carried the ball 41 times. That's a healthy amount. That's more than twice per game. And that was the highest amount of carries Curtis Samuel has had in a season for his career. And he was productive, had 200 yards on 41 carries with 2 touchdowns. And so this multifaceted skill set of Curtis Samuel is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Also in that season, he ran the ball 41 times, but he was also targeted 97 times in the passing game. So let's not forget about Curtis Samuel in this offensive formula, and I'm expecting him to have a lot of opportunity this season for the Bills. Another report from Alex Brasky. Ed Oliver beat Richard Gouraige up the middle, beating a Mitch Trubisky pass down, a coverage sack mixed in. I think the interesting part there is that Richard Gouraige is getting interior reps, presumably at guard, if he's going up against Ed Oliver. And Richard Gouraige was an undrafted free agent out of Florida last year, had a pretty good preseason, wound up spending his rookie season on the practice squad. This is year 2 for him. And he's obviously getting guard reps. And last year, all of his preseason snaps came at left tackle or at right tackle. But you go back to his college time at Florida, and he's played a lot of guard in addition to tackle. Now, his last 2 seasons were at tackle, so I think that's why you kind of get hung up on this idea that he's absolutely a tackle. But he's also has a lot of experience at guard, over 1,000 career snaps at Florida at guard, over 1,500 snaps at tackle. And so maybe we don't think enough about the versatility that Richard Gouraige brings to the table as an interior player and a guy that can play on the outside. And again, strong preseason year 2 under Aaron Kromer. We've seen this trajectory for other guys like Alec Anderson and Ryan Vandemark, who were 1 year on the practice squad, then they make the active roster. And you have to look at Richard Gouraige as a guy that is showcasing versatility and might have the same type of opportunity this year. Also with Gouraige, he's 6'4", 306 with 34-inch arms, and he didn't test very well in terms of athleticism. So you feel like maybe his best spot in the NFL could be on the inside, where he's playing less on an island and it's less required for him to be athletic and move well, right? You don't need as much athleticism to play on the inside. So maybe that's actually a good idea for him to maximize what he does have in terms of his skill set. The last thing here in terms of practice reports, Sean McDermott, this comes again courtesy of Alex Brasky. Sean McDermott remained on the practice field well after Tuesday's OTAs concluded, working with the defensive linemen, specifically Olympic champion wrestler Gable Stevenson, who is trying to find his way in a new sport. Later on, Thad Brown released some video of Sean McDermott working with Gable Stevenson, and you could see they're kind of just working on some different technique stuff. But what I found to be interesting is that the guy that was also right there with Gable Stevenson, dialed in on everything Sean McDermott was saying, Javon Solomon, the Bills draft pick out of Troy, the edge rusher. And we'll get to it here in just a moment, but there's been some really, really kind remarks from other players on the team about Javon Solomon and how hungry he is. And, lo and behold, he's out there right next to Gable Stevenson trying to get every ounce of coaching that he can from Sean McDermott. Also, Rondell Bothyard, undrafted free agent out of Oklahoma. He was out there in that session. And then one other defensive tackle that I was unable to determine who it was. But Sean McDermott putting in the time, obviously, he's going to want Gable Stevenson to, have every opportunity to be successful with the wrestling background, and they're both putting in time to see if they can get this thing figured out. Last thing I'll say from the practice reports is you felt from various different beat reporters in attendance that Chase Claypool once again had a really strong day. And we'll take a cautious approach here because the last 2 seasons of Chase Claypool's career have been a disaster, but his first 2 were really good. And this is a do or die season for Chase Claypool. And the more positive buzz that we get from him, the better, right? There's a lot that has to happen. They got to get the pads on and have contact practices and have training camp and have preseason. So it'll sort itself out. But right now there's definitely momentum as it relates to Chase Claypool. All right, on the other side of it, we're going to get into the comments made by Bobby Babich and some stuff said by Von Miller, Ed Oliver, and Greg Rousseau. So be sure to stick with me. Folks, the NFL schedule has been released, and the Bills have so many high-profile games. Maybe you want to get to some of those. Well, if you do, then you got to download the Game Time app. Game Time is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. The app is awesome. They specialize in last-minute tickets. They give you flash deals. They give you a seat view so you can know exactly what to expect when you get to the venue. Plus, I love this. The prices are all in. No surprise fees coming at the end of the purchase. The all-in price is given to you from the outset. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, folks, let's get into the comments made by Von Miller, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, and Bobby Babich. And we'll spend the most time on Bobby Babich, but we'll work through these players first. What I found interesting from listening to Von Miller, and, I've listened to a lot of Von Miller since he's become a Buffalo Bill, and he can sound repetitive in those types of things. But the thing I found interesting about what he said was about, kind of coming back and having confidence and going out there and performing to the standard that he set for his career. Von Miller said, I know what I can still do. I got to keep pushing. I know I have a few more years left. And in talking about that, he discussed both of his sons and how they're becoming of age to understand that their father is a football player. And every time they see a Bills logo, they say, Daddy, Daddy. And you could tell that it's important to him that his sons will have some impression of him being on the field as an NFL player. And I'm sure that is highly motivating for Von Miller. I don't really question that Von Miller hasn't worked hard and hasn't done everything that he can to work back from this injury, but he's obviously got to go out there and perform. And so him talking about the kids' dynamics and, saying out loud that I have a few more years left is a pretty strong indicator that, Von Miller does have intent of kind of getting things on track. If he can't play, then it's not going to matter that he wants to play, right? He's got to go out there and perform and do well. I'm very curious to see how this comes together. My expectations are low, but if you're looking for like that little bit of hope, it's that Von Miller can come back and be something like he was prior to the injury and really help this football team. The media had a chance to talk to Ed Oliver, and I think the most interesting thing there was what Ed Oliver said about Gable Stevenson. And he raved about Gable Stevenson being the best at what he does as a wrestler, right? Elite guy, gold medalist. He beat the world in a one-on-one sport. And Ed Oliver talked about his movement skills and how he moves really well. But I think in listening to not only Von Miller, but Ed Oliver getting asked about Gable Stevenson and them having some positivity about it and saying, look, we hope it works out and, we'll see, is some of the feedback that I've seen on this signing of Gable Stevenson is that it's a slap in the face to anyone who's ever played football before doesn't get an NFL contract, right? Like, I think some of these takeaways are so silly about this Gable Stevenson signing. Like, the worst case scenario is that it doesn't work out and he gets cut just like 37 players on the team. But if you can't recognize that this is a pretty special athlete that's extremely accomplished, that, it's worth a little bit of a dart throw here to see, It's crazy to me that the people can just take exception with, it seems like, anything in the world. And no, the players are not sitting around feeling like this is a big slap in the face to them that the Bills signed this guy. Sounds like they're all pretty invested in trying to help him out and see if he can help the team. You know what players are interested in? Guys that help them win football games. So if Gable Stevenson can do that, Von Miller, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, nobody's going to care that he didn't play football prior. He's there now. He's a teammate. And, hopefully he does wind up being a thing, and it's an awesome story to tell. And if not, oh well, who cares? But I think people just like to get mad about stuff just to get mad about stuff. And I think that's the case with Gable Stevenson. Some really bizarre feedback out there. On Greg Rousseau, what I felt most interesting about what Greg Rousseau talked about was Javon Solomon. He said, I really like him. He's twitchy, he's bendy, he's mature, he asks lots of questions. You can tell that he wants to get better. And listening to that comment and then seeing the video from Thad Brown of Javon Solomon just glued to Sean McDermott in that post-practice session with Gable Stevenson tells you he's hungry. I'm really hopeful with Javon Solomon. I'm looking for impact off this defensive line, guys. You hear me talking about it. The Bills need guys that can win battles and make plays and affect the quarterback at a higher clip than they have in the past. And I know that there's some good pressure rate stats and all that stuff that's out there, but in big moments, the pass rush just hasn't been good enough. And so I'm looking for any ounce of hope that there's some new opportunity coming. And so that's why I talk about Von Miller and Javon Solomon, and I have some level of intrigue about Gable Stevenson, and I'm hopeful for Ed Oliver and Greg Rousseau to continue growing. And AJ Epinesa, I talk about this all the time because it's the thing I'm most concerned about. And I'm looking for little glimmers of hope that the Bills can be more dynamic when it comes to rushing the passer and making those big-time impact plays. It's not bad. But when I think about this team and like where are the margins? What is going to get this team from being really good in the regular season and having a chance to go on a postseason run and even winning a playoff game every year? What's going to allow them to beat Cincinnati and beat Kansas City? They got to affect the quarterbacks more. How do you do that? Pass rush, defensive line. And so I'm excited that Javon Solomon's excited about being in the NFL and trying really hard to become a good player. Let's get into these comments by Bobby Babich. Bobby Babich, of course, the new defensive coordinator, and started off by just having a lot of gratitude about the opportunity. And we know that he had the chance to interview with the Giants and Dolphins. And Bobby Babich was not super interested in commenting on those opportunities, but wanted to make it about Buffalo. And he said he's very, very, very happy with where he is in Buffalo. And I wondered about this a little bit. Not that he wouldn't be happy to be the defensive coordinator for the Bills, but when I thought about Bobby Babich and what might be best for his career, when we were speculating over whether or not Sean McDermott was going to hire a defensive coordinator and who that was going to be, I thought to myself, Bobby Babich, a young, hotshot defensive coordinator, he's got a chance to go to the Giants. He's got a chance to go to the Dolphins. Both of those are teams with offensive-minded head coaches where he could get away from Sean McDermott, coach those defenses, has success, and nobody's ever going to question, who gets the credit. If the Bills have a great defense under Bobby Babich as a defensive coordinator, I think there's always going to be the question, Sean McDermott's the head coach. How much is he influencing things? Does Bobby Babich need Sean McDermott? And maybe those are questions that we'll have, or, conversations we'll have down the line. But it's really cool to me that Bobby Babich seemingly had other opportunities and he wanted to be in Buffalo where the head coach is defensive minded and he doesn't seem concerned that those types of, who gets the credit conversations will happen. On working with Sean McDermott and using him, Bobby Babich said this. He said, I'd be a fool if I don't use Sean McDermott. I've always looked at Sean as a mentor. I pick his brain every day and probably wear him out a bit. I've known him for 13 years. There's a lot of respect and admiration for what he's done. Our relationship is a benefit to me. So that pretty much clears up everything I was just speculating over. On Von Miller, Bobby Babich said he had flashes towards the end of the season. He's working hard to get back. They're training the skills that are needed for him to impact the game like we need him to. On Kaiir Elam, he said this is a clean slate for Kaiir Elam. He's working extremely hard. His mindset is where it needs to be. He's honing in on the little things that needs to improve. Interesting that he called it a clean slate. And one thing that I kind of picked up in listening to Bobby Babich is he's a details guy, right? Everything he says is minute by minute, detail by detail. We're not missing anything. We're not going to let little things become big things. And I love that mindset of like living in the moment, focusing on how you can become better right now. And then over time, you wind up becoming exactly what you want to be. And I really enjoy listening to Bobby Babich. I think he's got really, really good communication skills. And, hopefully he can really take control of this defense. And, you can feel the difference. I think there's a chance of that. On Gable Stevenson, he said, it's all about the details. How does it come along? Everything is new and fresh to him. We got to start at ground zero. There's physical tools that we hope to translate, but it's about the small details and seeing where it goes. It doesn't feel like he's ready to like hype up anybody, which was kind of cool. Even on Cole Bishop, he said he has a bright future, but he's a rookie. He's learning. He's growing every day. And Joe Dana, the safeties coach, is working hard to get him up to speed. You can tell that things are going to be earned under Bobby Babich. On Taron Johnson, and, the question was phrased along the lines of, he's got to step into this leadership role with so much turnover in the secondary. This is what Bobby Babich said. He said, hey, Taron Johnson's always been a leader to me. His game has helped us win games. Taron knew that Jordan, Micah, and Tre'Davious were there and where he fit into the equation. Now that they're gone, he understands there's a void, and he stepped up to the plate and done a great job. On play calling, which seems to be the hot button conversation with Bobby Babich and Sean McDermott, this is what Bobby Babich said about play calling. He said, I have a different perspective on this. In general, in this job, you're never ready until you do it. I've prepared myself for 12 or 13 years. You're constantly trying to prepare yourself to get into this position, but until you actually do something, you are never ready. I don't have the ego to sit up here and say that I'm ready. I'm vulnerable enough to say that I am as prepared as I could possibly be, and I will continue to learn every day, every part of this process. I'm going to make mistakes. It's going to happen, but I'm prepared, and I have a great mentor. I'm really excited and willing to do whatever it takes to help this team win a Super Bowl. What more could you ask for? What a great way to answer that question. As we speculate over whether it's going to be Bobby Babich or it's going to be Sean McDermott, I think at some point it's going to be Babich, and whether that's week 1, week 7, next year, who knows? But I thought Bobby Babich had a really good approach to that overall conversation. All right, folks, on the other side of it, I want to talk about the Bills signing draft picks, cutting a player, and then the bid that they made for the 2028 NFL draft. So be sure to stick with me. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off our chest every once in a while. Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for people who have experienced major trauma. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Just visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, folks, let's get caught up on some newsy items here to close out our conversation today. The Bills announced that they have signed 8 more draft picks. So they already signed 7th-round pick Travis Clayton, the rugby player that's going to play offensive line for the Bills. And then they signed every other draft pick except for Keon Coleman. So 9 of the 10 draft picks now under contract. Again, the exception being Keon Coleman. I will tell you this, there is absolutely nothing to be concerned about that Keon Coleman's the lone guy that hasn't signed. This will take care of itself. My speculation is that the Bills want Keon Coleman to have his own headline, right? They don't want to lump him in with 8 other draft picks. Keon Coleman's become a bit of a high-profile guy throughout the NFL community. They want him to have his own headline and not lump them together. That's my speculation. As for the cap implications of signing the draft picks, I've been through this, but in case you're unaware, The salary cap at this point only accounts for your top 51 contracts. So when you sign a player, the guy that's the 51st highest paid player falls off. And you're talking about rookie deals that are very small. Most of these guys, later round picks. There's not a big cap implication. For all of the Bills draft picks, it's going to cost about $2 million total in cap space. So the Bills, now that we're after June 1st and the Trey White money hits, the Bills are right at about $12 million in cap space. I think after they sign all of the draft picks, they're going to have about 9 to 10. So that's the cap situation. The Bills also signed a player, and that means there was a corresponding move, so they released one. The player they signed is Shayne Simon, a rookie, undrafted free agent linebacker from Pittsburgh. Started his career at Notre Dame. 6'3", 233 pounds, RAS score of a 7.97, pretty strong there. Had basically one season of experience starting at Pitt, another season at Notre Dame. Didn't have a very big special teams role throughout his career. He has a lot of snaps, 505 career special team snaps, but that was spread across 5 seasons. So we'll see. I don't really expect Shayne Simon to come in and make the roster, but he's now part of the mix, part of this 91-man roster. To me, the more interesting thing is the corresponding move, which is the waiving of Tommy Doyle. And Tommy Doyle, former Bills 5th-round draft pick, caught a touchdown in the playoffs, which is cool. He kind of was one of those original utility tight end players. A lot of size and athleticism. Just very unfortunate that the last 2 years he's torn his ACL. And Sean McDermott raves quite a bit about that Miami game, the one that the Bills lost in the heat and all that, where like they were down to no more offensive linemen. Tommy Doyle tears his ACL, but stays in the game and finishes out that last drive. And then, of course, the season was over. Very unfortunate. It seems like based on some of the pictures that have come out and some of the bracing that he still has on his leg, that there could be some nerve damage. I'm kind of concerned that, the career might be over for Tommy Doyle. Very unfortunate. It's just the reality of compiling these injuries and, how delicate an NFL career could be. But his time in Buffalo has come to a close. He's the corresponding move with the signing of Shayne Simon. The last thing I want to mention is the Bills have placed a bid to host the 2028 NFL Draft at the new Highmark Stadium. And this has me really excited. I hope, and not only do I hope, but the Buffalo Bills, the Western New York deserves to have the NFL Draft for a number of reasons. First of all, they're not going to get the Super Bowl. Super Bowl is never going to come to Buffalo. So getting a signature NFL event like this in Buffalo just makes all the sense in the world. Bills Mafia is going to show up and make it an amazing event. And you get to really kind of showcase not only, where your region of the country, but this new stadium, right? This is a big, big deal that the Bills are getting this new stadium. And I know that maybe it doesn't check every box that you hoped that it would check. But damn it, the Bills are getting a new stadium. And that keeps them in Western New York for a long time. And I couldn't be more excited about it. And so I really hope this comes to fruition. This would be just an amazing event for Western New York and for us as Bills fans to show the entire NFL world what we're all about. I really hope this happens. And I like that you've seen the NFL draft kind of branch off. It's no longer like every year in New York City. You've seen it in Cleveland. You've seen it, bigger cities like Philly and Chicago, right? Vegas. But Detroit, right? This past year, it's going to be in Green Bay, Kansas City, right? Doesn't have to be in every big market town in America, right? You can do this in small markets. And so, God, I hope this happens. I really, really do. That would be such an amazing event for the community and for us as Bills fans. So here's to hoping that the Bills host the 2028 NFL Draft. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Still plenty of content coming your way this weekend throughout the entire offseason. As a reminder, we are daily, Monday through Friday, all year long. So whether it's during the regular season, the playoffs, or the middle of June and July, I'm here for you. So make sure that you are subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.